Hello, and welcome to Some Guy Who Paints. I'm Some Guy, and I paint things. Sometimes they'll make it to YouTube. Other times I'm building the things that I'm going to paint, or figuring out how to paint the thing I want to paint. Anyway, today we're having a look at the aluminium E11 Blaster Kit replica that I recently ordered through eBay. I believe this is a Blaster Factory or Field Marshal E11. I brought it through a seller that wasn't called either of those things, and I'm not overly familiar with the manufacturers in the world of metal blaster kits, so please excuse my ignorance if I refer to something incorrectly. I'm new to all this, and I'm still learning. In this first video of a planned series, I'll be having a look over the kit in general, along with the assembly diagrams, to get a feel for how in-depth the build is going to be, and what else I'm going to need to get it completed. I have a Blaster Core version 5 that I picked up a couple of years ago from Plector Labs that's been patiently waiting on the shelf for a project worthy of it. While we watch this guy on screen fumble his way through an impressive pile of aluminium pieces, it's probably worth talking a little bit about what I'm going to be doing with this project, and also my expectations compared to other E11 builds that are out there. Just to note, I've credited any third-party images that I've used in this video to the best of my ability. If you are the owner of any of these images and you think I've miscredited anything, please let me know and I will amend the accreditation accordingly, either in the video description or in the video itself, time permitting. I claim no ownership on any credited image and use them in good faith only to illustrate a point I'm trying to make. With that said, I'll put it out there early. When it comes to creating props or replicas, I'm not someone who insists on absolute millimetre precision. In relation to the E11 Blaster in particular, there are so many variations on screen over the course of the original trilogy, from hero props to rubber stunt casts, various greeblies that come and go as they're glued on or fall off, not to mention on-set repairs and modifications. So for me, the E11 offers a nice degree of creative freedom. As I'll say elsewhere, this is very much my take on the matter. You're free to feel differently and everyone's perspective is valid for their own projects. Basically what I'm trying to say is that, in my mind, if you want your E11 to have a New Hope style T-track and Return of the Jedi style hammer greeblies on the back, then go for it. It's your time, it's your money, and you have to enjoy what you've made. If instead you strive for 100% screen accuracy down to individual scrapes and dents recreated with utter faithfulness, then that's great. I hope you enjoy the process and can be proud of your work. Personally, I want to inject some of my own ideas into this project. The satisfaction for me is making something that's recognisable but allows me to have some fun with the details where I want to. You've probably guessed by now this is going to be something of a Frankenstein build. I'll preface this up front and say I'm going to pick and choose design elements from different E11 builds that I like, based purely for their aesthetics. I'm not going to justify it beyond that. As I mentioned, this is my personal project, so I'm going to build a blaster that I'm proud of. Hopefully you'll enjoy the process, if not the end result or its total screen accuracy. What does all this mean then? For a general overview, I'll go front to back with my initial plans, though of course these could change or be amended on the fly, but I'll do my best to document any big decisions and the reasons behind them. Starting off at the muzzle, which at present is planned to contain an RGB red, green, blue LED for the regular red blaster effect and blue for the optional stun setting, as offered by the Blaster Core board. So far so good. The first change though comes with the plastic T-track that's provided with this kit and is present on the New Hope and Empire E11 models. I've watched the original trilogy for as many years as I can remember, and for whatever reason, I've never liked the T-track on this blaster. It looks great on lightsabers, I just don't like it on this blaster. I know, I'm sorry. I do, however, really like the C-channel that's used on the Return of the Jedi E11 blaster. There's something more grounded about this design to me. The fins sticking up from the barrel shroud somehow looks like it works more than the T-track, if you catch my meaning. For some reason it just looks like a more believable design to me. You know, a more believable design for a fake firearm that goes pew-pew in outer space. A bit of online research confirmed these Return of the Jedi tracks to be half-inch aluminium C-channel, so in lieu of being able to find an easy supply of aluminium stock near me, I have some 12.7mm styrene channel that has just arrived, plus I already have the hex head bolts to attach them to the barrel from a previous project. Moving back down the blaster, I ordered an Airsoft Sterling SMG magazine, hoping it would fit this model, which of course it didn't, but that's fine as it can be used as a template for me to make my own. I'll be constructing this from styrene sheet, and the magazine will also house a switch of some kind to enable the reload function from the blaster core. The scratch-built magazine will be based on the airsoft piece along with some reference blueprints I found online for the original item. The top of the magazine well is going to include the power cylinders, which I have on order from the same eBay seller that I bought this E11 kit from. As this will mostly cover the fantastic stamped lettering on the magwell, I'll be filling the lettering in with contrasting paint in a method similar to the M38 scope lettering. This may sound like it could be a bit too stark. The vast majority of the lettering will be covered, so it should hopefully be more of an Easter egg than a glaring break in generally accepted finishes. I'm going to be including the New Hope style scope rail, M38 scope, and Hengstler counter. Not only do I think the Hengstler counter is an iconic part of the silhouette of the E11, I'm going to use it to house at least one speaker and a bar graph indicator for the power level of the blaster. The Hengstler I've got with this kit is the Large Eagle version, I believe. However, this will mean that I'll be losing the number dial and putting the bar graph in its place. Heresy. Heresy too that I want to include the wires connecting the Hengstler prongs to the power cylinders on the magazine well, which I believe features only in promo shots from A New Hope, but I like them so they're staying in. As just mentioned, the M38 scope replica will get the widely accepted white lettering details with bronze weathering, though I'm not going to texture it as I've seen some other builders do. Personal choice, but I prefer the smooth cast look to this particular scope. While retaining the replica bolt in the chamber, I'm going to have to forgo the spring behind it. The return slide channel will be covered internally with mesh to make space for the blaster core soundboard, battery pack, and possibly a second speaker. This isn't too much of a loss of feature for me, as the action of the bolt is impeded by the folding stock mounting screws, so I can retain the aesthetic of the bolt while giving myself a bit more room for electronics. It's a sacrifice of authenticity in favour of making life easier. I'll retain the folding stock that will need to be dismantled, painted, and then remantled afterwards, but I want to retain its function even if on screen the stock isn't actually used. It's a great functional piece of engineering, so it's staying in, even if it's never traditionally seen in use. It may be somewhat of a controversial opinion, but I don't plan to use the blaster core's ray propagation feature. This is the string of LEDs that can be wired along the inside of the barrel to create the energy effect travelling along it. I've never really liked this on the replicas I've seen, this is just my preference, but for whatever reason, I've never really taken to the effect. I'm strange, I know. That being said, I will concede to putting some kind of lighting effect in the barrel, aside from the RGB LED planned for the muzzle. I'll most likely include a second RGB LED, probably a 3 watt, within the barrel to provide a single flash when the trigger's pulled. This is to say that although I don't generally like sequenced LEDs for blasters, I don't mind an ambient glow alongside a muzzle flash. It feels more realistic to my mind. With all of that out of the way, let's have a look at the E11 kit itself. I don't want to dwell too long on the individual parts of the kit. I'll provide a more in-depth review of the blaster as I continue to build and paint it, so instead I'll give my general observations for now as a complete layman to the subject. My first impression of the kit overall is, well, very positive. Admittedly, this is my first metal blaster kit from any manufacturer. I've previously owned the DL44 Greedo Killer from Doopy Doos, which is a very decent quality all-resin kit. Plus I've dabbled with plastic blasters and converted non-functioning plastic BB guns, but nothing fully metal like this. All of the parts I'm going through are clean and free from obvious burrs with very manageable tooling or casting marks. The holes on the barrel, one of the more recognisable parts of the Sterling SMG, are evenly spaced, uniform and free from flaws. I'm a fan of the welded elements, such as in front of the breech opening, which while not flawless, has a suitably military look to them, a feature that while not perfect still looks functional. The magazine well has clear, deep stamped lettering that is crisp, complete with working magazine release button. Although it arrived as a complete sub-assembly, like the rest of the kit, it can be broken down for cleaning and painting. The bends in the scope rail are precise and clean, with mounting holes located for the scope. The scope itself is a nice piece of engineering, complete with brass accents at the front and rear. Casting lines are minimal, and the included lenses can be removed prior to painting to avoid the need to mask everything off. I'll mention here that I'll need to check if casting marks or seams in general were present on the original Sterling to decide whether they need cleaning up or not, though personally I quite like the idea of leaving them in situ. It adds to the texture of the kit and makes the blaster seem more lived in, for want of a better term. I'll look into this and make a final decision as we go. The grip section is a nice solution. It comes pre-assembled but can be broken down in order to access the soldering points inside. There's a 3-stage selector switch, which I need to take apart and have a look at. It feels a little bit flimsy and doesn't quite point to where it's supposed to. Hopefully it's a quick fix with some glue and a pin. There's the trigger itself, which feels like it needs a switch or a spring put behind it to function correctly, but we'll find out on further examination another time. The folding stock is a great addition. Again, like the grip section, it comes pre-assembled but can be broken down via the Allen screws dotted around the frame. This means I'll be able to get the pieces painted and reassembled while allowing for some difference in finishes across the individual parts. I'll be leaving the moving internal parts their natural aluminium finish for a bit of variation. My one complaint at the moment is that the stock doesn't appear to lock effectively in the extended position. This is very likely me being an idiot. This is very possible, as it appears the rear cap can slide back once it's installed, so it could be that this is part of the locking mechanism for the stock. I'll see what the internet says, because the internet wouldn't lie to me, surely. Overall then, yes, I'm pretty pleased with how this kit looks. This could easily be down to my lack of experience with metal blaster kits in general, but it doesn't seem to be too much work to get the pieces prepped and ready for paint. As I've mentioned paint, I guess I should address this now as I have plans. But as with so many things, these may change as time progresses. I've touched on some aspects of this already, so I'll keep things to the point. Firstly, anything in the kit that's made of black plastic is going to stay black plastic. The only treatment they'll be receiving is a polish and a little weathering as needed, so that will include the grip and the back of the Hengstler counter. The majority of the rest of the blaster will be varying finishes of black paint unless it's being left intentionally as raw aluminium. The scope will be a matte black with the usual bronze weathering and white inlaid lettering, while I'll alternate gloss and satin blacks across the scope rail and various metal Hengstler parts to create some visual interest. Everything will need to be thoroughly cleaned and degreased before sanding with maybe 400 grit sandpaper to ensure the best paint adhesion possible. The main decision I still need to make about the paint is whether to texture paint the barrel of the blaster or not. I've read many a forum and blog post, watched many a YouTube video on the subject, and honestly there seem to be as many people espousing the use of textured paint as there are arguing for a smooth satin finish. And I think I fall somewhere in the middle. For me, it all comes down to what I said earlier about your personal choice. Your blaster is your project, so for me you can texture paint or not your blaster as you see fit. I can see the argument from both the pro texture and no texture camps. From the pro texture side, so many original trilogy set photos show the E11s with a very distinct surface texture. I think this is down to old Sterlings with ill-maintained bluing plus the layers of paint for production, rather than an in-universe style choice. Now it's true that some modern Sterlings are supplied with a textured grip-like finish on them, but from the admittedly limited research I've managed to get through, vintage Sterlings had a smooth finish, hence the no texture argument. So really to me, it comes down to whether I'm trying to emulate the props used in the original trilogy, or I'm trying to replicate the Sterling that they were based on. And yes, I'm sure there are photos out there of perfectly smooth, screen-used E11s, I'm not arguing that they don't exist, but Star Wars was described by its creator as a lived-in, recycled universe where nothing is new. So I understand the want for prop builders to include the texture. All that said, I'm currently on the side of texturing the barrel. Not to the extreme that I've seen with some prop builds out there. Again, this is their respective owner's choice and they should do it as they please, but for me, another texture and finish of black paint on an almost entirely black blaster can only be a good thing. My current front runners for texture are an extra fine stone finish that looks like a mid-grade sandpaper, or a hammered appearance paint, but I'm open to advice from anyone who's used a textured finish on their blaster build previously. So with the raw aluminium parts, inlaid stamped text picked out in white, the odd coloured wire and various finishes to the black paint, hopefully it should bring some much needed interest to a one-colour blaster. Now I'm sure some of this sounds awful and garish and wrong and heretical to some prop makers out there, but this E11 was never going to be used for trooping with the 501st, or anyone else. My idea for the blaster is that it's more of a relic, maybe something salvaged from before the Empire fell, and has been used and maintained by its current owner over the years, replacing and upgrading parts as needed, having to make do with scavenged parts from shady blaster dealers and off-world Imperial Arms contacts. Speaking of blaster dealers, shady or otherwise, what else is going to be needed to complete this kit outside of the kit itself? Well, I said previously that I'd ordered a possible replacement airsoft magazine to use as an energy clip, but Sod's Law dictates that this was too easy a solution for it to have worked, as it was. I'm not averse to a bit of styrene sheet fabrication, so I plan to make my own cut-down magazine using the details of the replica I have, but scaled to fit this magazine well. This will be left until most of the wiring rig is finished, so I can figure out what type of switch I'm going to use as the reload and unjamming mechanism, so for now I'll just be drawing it out and prototyping the shape. Speaking of wiring rigs, I'll probably need some wire. Makes sense. Somewhere in one of my studio cupboards, I'm sure I have assorted, probably very tangled wires, solder, and other electrical supplies, but I have no idea where they are and very little desire to find out. The majority of it will most likely not be suitable for intricate electronic work, so it's probably worth my while investing in some fresh and more suitable supplies for the task. This will also include some new hardware, like a soldering iron that isn't older than me, and a couple of other bits that I'm no doubt forgetting. The last major component will be the power cylinders that sit on top of the magazine well. I have this on order as mentioned, and that kit should be with me before you see this video. I'm not going to dwell on this particular piece too much for now and my plans for it. There's some more research I'd like to get in, and also this will be a mini build and it can have its own video down the line. I think this brings us about up to date with the first stage of this new project. I won't lie, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into this one and seeing where some more research takes me. No doubt towards a lot of second-guessing myself and wondering if I'm making the best decisions at each stage. Despite my extolling the virtues of completing your projects your way to make the most of your time, enjoyment, and money, there's still a part of me that wants to recreate my E11 Blaster as screen accurately as possible, with every minute scratch and tarnish in the correct place, period-accurate paint, etc., etc. But I also know that that way lies madness for me. This project is a 40th birthday present to myself, something I've put off starting for a number of years, but with fresh inspiration behind me, I'm going to create the kind of blaster prop that I know I'll be infinitely more fulfilled by in the long run. And that's something with my spin on it, a blaster that could exist in a post-Empire world in the Star Wars universe. A weapon that's been maintained, updated, repaired, and personalised a bit over the years. So it's something that's mine. Maybe it'll even get a custom holster in time. Maybe it'll get a shoulder strap. Maybe it'll inspire me to finish my custom Mandalorian armor. We'll see, I guess. If you want to keep up to date with this project and any others that I bring to the channel, then feel free to subscribe for any updates. I'll endeavour to keep things updated here and on Instagram. My plan is to put out a video each month documenting my progress, along with any mini project updates, the first of which will be the M38 scope from this kit, complete with step-by-steps, paints, and other materials used. Finally, this is my first time scripting a video rather than just sitting at a mic, talking, and then trying to make sense of it all in editing. I've tried to include relevant photos where needed, and I hope you enjoyed the format. I'm always looking for suggestions on how to improve content on the old channel and now on this one, so please comment and let me know what I can do better, either with the build itself or the video in general. Hopefully I'll see you again for the next video, and if not, thanks for checking out this one. Cheers guys.